Okay. We talked about this idea of inactivity and how Americans are about 3 times less active than they were in the Paleolithic times. But as this slide says, inactivity is only half of the story. The other half is this idea of food acquisition. We talked about in the first session where we talked about evolution and the evolutionary pressure of having very scarce nutrients and a hot environment. Well, if we look at what that looks like, this is the savanna. You can see that there's not a lot of food that you can see there. Now, if we look at a typical grocery now, there's a huge ability to get food very, very quickly with no work at all. We can all have access to no matter what food we need. Even if we're currently under this sequester in place, we can sit down at our computer and order as much food as we want. It's delivered in between 2 hours and a day. So really what we're looking at is not just about inactivity, but we've got this just huge amount and huge availability of food. And if we just look at what it used to be, this is a McDonald's meal in 1950. And you can see that the burger was almost 4 ounces. The French fries were 2.4 ounces. The soda was 7 ounces. Now, if we look at what McDonald's meal is, we're looking at 3 times bigger hamburger. We're looking at a 6 times bigger soda and twice the amount of French fries. So now the caloric availability there in that same meal, we're having the same things that, my father would have had when he was a kid. Well, even though you're eating the same meal, your meal is 3 to 6 times bigger than what was used to be consumed. So if we do some simple math, our body weight is a balance between our calories in and our calories out. So our calories out, that's our physical activity. What I showed you last time, that's decreasing by about 3 to 4 fold. Yeah, okay, if we want to keep the intake the same and we decreased our calories out by 3 to 4 fold, body weight would obviously increase. But when we combine the decrease in activity with an increase in caloric intake, the result is huge increases in body weight. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing we're seeing averages of 25% of the population being obese or more. We're seeing a huge increase in diseases of this hypokinesis. And so really that's where the challenge comes in, is trying to figure out this balance and get this balance right. So when we look at obesity in America, I just gave you a few of the numbers. In the West, where again, activity is high, and in the East, where the activity was higher, you can see that we're still between 25 and 30% obesity. If we get into places like the South, activity is low, dietary intake is high. Culturally, there's this culture of really enjoying the meal component and a lot of those other types of things and not being active. We're looking at greater than 35% of the population is obese. So really, we're having this huge effect where obesity is going up. And again, with obesity comes a series of diseases that we'll talk about. So here's a question for you. If we evolved to cover great distances with very few nutrients, what would you hypothesize would happen to a person given this high increase in caloric intake and this big decrease in activity? So take a look through that and we'll talk about that. So the question I asked for you at the beginning of our hypokinesis lectures was, how many deaths do you think are related to inactivity? And this has actually been measured back in about 8 years ago now by Steve Blair, who's one of the world's experts in looking at epidemiology and exercise. And what you can see here is that this is CRF, that's cardiorespiratory fitness. That's your fitness, that's your physical fitness. Low cardiorespiratory fitness, independent of any other thing, causes about 16% of all deaths in the United States. That's higher than obesity, smoking, high cholesterol, and diabetes combined. It's not a question of being overweight, because this is the component of obesity. Obesity is giving us about a 3% response to mortality. It's really about this low cardiorespiratory fitness. And really, that's the core component of it. And I'll show you that as we go.